Casino Royale is too much for one James Bond. Join the Casino Royale fun movement.
Bond, I'm Lieutenant Mathis of the Special Police.
Peter Sellers is James Bond.
These are my credentials.
They appear to be in order.
Ursula Andress is James Bond. David Niven is James Bond. Woody Allen is James Bond.
My doctor says I can't have bullets enter my body at any time. What if I said I was pregnant?
Joanna Pettit is James Bond.
Rather warm in here, don't you think?
Cool it, Charlie.
Casino Royale is too much for one James Bond. Orson Welles is the heaviest heavy of Smurfs. Dahlia Lavi is James Bond.
I'm the new secret weapon.
They've got us on the run with guns and knives. We're fighting for our lives.
Casino Royale is too much for one James Bond. Next, Terence Cooper is James Bond. Barbara Boucher is James Bond. Casino Royale is indestructibly wild.
Hello, sailor.
Indescribably funny.
Oh, you like that sort of thing, eh?
Join the Casino Royale fun movement.
I have been told that I must inform you the following program contains adult subject matter, adult language, and spoilers. Now thank you, and enter if you dare.
I'm assuming that your first encounter with anything related to Casino Royale was probably the '67 movie. I don't expect you saw the TV thing. You're probably
I remember seeing
You
it.
saw Climax and what,
It was, you know, that was a regular show.
Yeah. I assume they did adaptations every week of different books and stuff, right?
Right.
Right.
But the thing was, it didn't mean a lot to me.
Sure.
And I watched it when we started this thing. I rewatched it. You can go online and find it and watch
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
You know, I'd forgotten just how bad TV was back then.
Live from Television City in Hollywood. Barry Nelson. Peter Lorre. Linda Christian. Starring in tonight's production of Climax. A great new hour-long dramatic series from Hollywood. Ladies and gentlemen, your host, William Lundigan.
Good evening. This doesn't look dangerous, does it? But it's killed plenty of men and women. It's made beggars of many and millionaires of a few, mighty few. In French gambling casinos, this is called a chou. It holds the cards for baccarat, king of gambling games, and its purpose is to make sure that no one can pull any funny business like dealing from the bottom. The game to be played tonight is for the highest stakes of all. A man is going to wager his life. Climax presents Casino Royale from the bestseller by Ian Fleming.
You know, this game fascinates me, but I just can't get the hang of it.
Well, it's like any game. You win or you lose.
Aren't you the fellow who was shot?
No, I'm the fellow who was missed.
Well, it looks like you're as lucky as they say.
Eh?
Oh, you're a legend, old boy. Card Sense Jimmy Bond, they call you. I knew you right away.
Well, I didn't know I had that much of a reputation.
Oh, my dear fellow. Look here. How about you give me the lowdown? How to play. Over a drink? Oh, I'm very sorry. My name's Clarence Leiter.
Well, sure. What have I got to lose?
Do you ever lose, old boy? Bar's over there. Lead on.
Monsieur le Chief, the bank is open.
Tomorrow. Very lucky you, Mr. Bond.
Yes.
And very handsome. Tell me, Has he changed much since the days when you two were...
He looks just the same.
Uh-huh.
You want me to talk with him now?
Plenty of time. I'll tell you when.
I'm attached to Station S, British Secret Service. We're working in conjunction with the Deuxième Bureau and your own chaps of Combined Intelligence Agency in Washington.
Oh, it seems that we have a good many friends in common.
Yes, doesn't it? You know you're here to deal with Herr Zipper. Le Chiffre, he's the same fellow.
Deal with? You mean kill him?
You won't have to. He'll die anyway, if you play your cards right. Have you ever seen Le Chiffre? Le Chiffre is the toad-like creature, playing at the table in there. He's the chief Soviet agent for this area, controlled through Leningrad, Section 3 through Paris. And he's the most dangerous man they've ever had. He's a fanatic. He's ruthless, incorruptible, and everything he does is entirely legal. But he has a weak spot, and that's how you got into it.
Well, I'll tell you this. I watched it. I want to say without the commercials, maybe like 45 minutes or so. And, of course, it's a truncated adaptation of the novel, but a fairly faithful adaptation. And, yeah, just the actual, like, cinematography and stuff, everything's so damn fuzzy. But I think that for the budget, within those constraints of it basically taking place in, like, 2 rooms, I thought it was actually pretty solid.
Those playhouse where it was actually just like that one, a play on TV, their lighting was always bad, so it always had that washed out look to it. I'd just forgotten it until I saw it. There was a lot of stuff. It's like Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. Back in those days, we got our first color TV in 1964. It was a gift to my father from his employer. We just thought it was awesome, but there was only a handful of shows that were in color.
Right. Not a lot of movies either, I would expect.
Well, and you should know because they were still showing some of them old movies when you were a kid watching them at home. There wasn't all that many color anything. And things like the local TV newscasts weren't in color.
Yeah.
When we got ours, everybody talked about the colors in Bonanza. Because Bonanza was in color.
That was the one I was going to suggest. I knew Bonanza was in color.
Yeah, and you know, Bonanza was new.
Gunsmoke switched to color eventually, but didn't it?
Right, that's right. And a lot of that stuff, Wild Wild West, it came long after color, and its first year or two was in black and white.
Yeah. That's the kind of show that really benefits from color.
Yeah. And the same thing, you know, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, it was black and white originally. There wasn't really all that much on TV. I remember, you know, Johnny Carson was one of the first shows that was in color. Yeah, there just wasn't a lot of color stuff on there, and especially in the mid-'60s. That was when they were trying to get color. And then stuff like Rowan and Martin Laugh-In came in, and of course they just really used color and everything. We thought it was great, man. It was something to behold. It wasn't until '64, and I'm not sure we would have gotten one then if he hadn't been gifted that TV.
Yeah,
it was a 26-inch RCA and a walnut cabinet. That was our TV into the '70s. That was your grandmother's primary TV. They were still using it when you were a kid. But everything was like that. You know, things are so disposable now. But electronics back then cost a lot of frickin' money. So people, you know, when they got that stuff, they hung on to it. Whether they used it or not, they hung on to it.
Yeah.
Because of the expense of it. My great aunts and stuff, you know, when I was growing up, we were still listening to radio shows too. The radio played a lot, and when we were at the old house, they had a big console radio, and it's bigger than what you might be thinking of, because when you were younger, people were still buying consoles.
Yeah, my grandmother had one.
Yeah,
but it died relatively quickly. So then she just put another TV on top of the console and watched it that way pretty much the rest of her life.
And she probably bought it on time from one of them companies like White's.
If I remember correctly, she bought it at Jimco. I think I remember shopping for it at Jimco because I remember her buying it, and I remember it going out. So we probably shopped for it sometime in the very early '80s. It probably died by '86 at the latest. And then for the last few years of her life, there was a TV on top of the TV.
Yeah, I knew people, even people with money, they'd have a big console TV. Shades of the boombox. Of course, when the boombox was popular, if you were playing a country hit like that, somebody might have shot you. No, a lot of people in the 80s would have these real nice console TVs, and it was only the TV that went crapo on them. And people still got TVs repaired back then.
Yeah.
But there come a point to where you had diminishing value. And a lot of them went out and bought TVs and gutted their old TV and put the new TV, which was a plain Jane cabinet TV, inside the console.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew people that did that, you know. Because it was cheaper and it was the same difference, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, by then, there was a lot more remote control stuff. When I was a kid, we were fascinated by remote control, you know, and of course, a lot of our remote control was what we called the clinker. You know, when you pushed it, it
had a spring. You feel the clink of it.
Well, yeah, it clicked because it didn't really use a radio signal. Some of the clickers, actually, it was the click itself that triggered the thing.
Well, a lot of times they were remote, but they were tethered. They were wired.
Oh, yeah. Stereo. I had a Fisher stereo, a real expensive one that you could change the radio channels. That's all you could do. You had 2 buttons to, you know.
Forward, advance, and reverse.
And of course, there was none of that stuff was even on the TVs. It wasn't electronic. There was motors. I mean, the manual thing would actually move, you know, and of course, a lot of them click too. So you go clock pop with your clicker, and then the TV would go click, 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 you know. Yeah, but no, in the 70s, they started coming out with stuff that was like the electronic tuners, which is a lot like the digital TV tuners. Pretty much the same thing. You could buy one and attach it to your TV, put the TV on channel 3, and then you had remote control. And of course, it plugged into the wall, and then your TV plugged into it, so you could turn on. Yeah, people thought that was great, man. It's sure a lot cheaper than deadgum remote control you would buy, you know. Plus the fact you had something cool looking sitting on top of your TV. You know, it wasn't like today where you tried to get rid of stuff. You wanted stuff to show how cool you was. Your component stereo, you couldn't have enough to plug into that dead gum thing. That was the same thing in cars. I had a Fisher equalizer. I remember it was a 12-channel equalizer in my car. Most of the time, I left it pretty much alone. And it was a quad unit on top of it. And I had a quad stereo. Yeah, every time they came out with something new, I'd sell what I had, and go buy the new stuff and stick it in there. But I had quad in my car, had quad in my house, and I still think it was crazy for quad to go away. I thought it sounded great, man. Certainly in the car it did. Now, it might have caused a lot of accidents because somebody gave you a tape and the sound went and you go looking around when you shouldn't be. What are you doing looking around? Pass that joint. Right. And of course, back then, that was serious business. Now, I saw that Willie Nelson special. Did you see it? Willie Nelson Made 90?
Yeah, I was aware of it, but I haven't seen it.
Man, all they talked, the whole through the thing, the issue of pot, and who was it? It was not Tupac.
Snoop Dogg?
Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg was sitting there on stage with Willie holding the ganja. I'm a him. Big marijuana cigar. Saying, yeah, that's what I got on national TV, man.
Yeah.
If you were my age, you would really, I mean, you're old enough to know.
Yeah.
But somebody my age, man, I could just see sponsors and hell, you'd probably have the United States Congress going into overdrive trying to have somebody arrested. And hell, if they'd done that in Texas today, it probably would have.
Yeah.
So what was it about the...
So you actually saw the original 1954 Casino Royale adaptation.
Yeah, and
it didn't make too much of an impression. It was just something to watch, apparently.
No, it was kind of boring. Plus, you watch it, you know things like the walls move.
Oh, sure,
and,
sure.
And it wasn't just the lighting, but the sound sucked too.
Yeah, sometimes I think about how much more things cost, or how much more television stuff costs. And I'll watch an old show, it's like, oh yeah, that's because you could tell that they're on a soundstage. You could get away with it back then. It was okay back then for it to be obvious that you've got rear projection going on. Now, if you're not actually in the country, everybody's going to call you out on it. So, Barry Nelson is Jimmy Bond. I think it was okay for what it was, but man, that ain't my James Bond. I think that's automatically the worst James Bond, just because he's got none of the cool. He's got that frickin' jar head. He's an American. You know, it's just like strike after strike after strike.
And that tells you a lot about America back then.
Yeah.
It tells you a heck of a lot. First off, that thing aired on TV, if I'm not mistaken, just about the time of the British invasion.
It would have been before, because you talk about 54 and the British invasion was the early 60s, right?
Well, yeah.
So it's almost a decade.
Right, but I remember, you saw it on Ed Sullivan for one thing. You saw things on Ed Sullivan that you wouldn't see anywhere else. And there would be comments, and we thought, I remember the way people thought back then, that people in places like New York were way far advanced than us. They were snooty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We didn't understand the fascination, and we almost saw it as a put down that we didn't understand.
Yeah.
Just because Ed Sullivan had bad taste sometimes. But yeah, I remember seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. I didn't like them back then. I thought they looked cool, but they did silly things like move their heads around a lot. But I remember the first time I saw the Beetle boot, I just thought that was wild. And it was just like the first time I saw Star Trek. What were they wearing? Beetle boots. The things that we thought, the way that we thought back then, is so totally different. It would be alien to anybody today, even somebody your age, because things were already changing in the 70s by the time you came around. I mean, you had things like the Doobie Brothers, Felix the Cat, and all that kind of crap, things were already changing. You could call it a counterculture, but in a way it was the culture. It just wasn't the sports suit culture. That's the best way I could describe it. The blue collar culture and the sports suit culture were very, very similar. It was just their lifestyles were different. The cars they drove were different. Anyway, when I saw it, I'm pretty sure that it was like 59 or 60 when I saw it.
So you saw a rebroadcast probably?
Probably, yeah. It would.
I mean, the fact that we are seeing it today means they actually recorded the damn thing instead of erasing
You gotta
the tapes.
understand. You gotta understand. That's where I was kind of going with the color TV thing. There weren't that many TV programs. There just wasn't. And what there was, a lot of it was repeat stuff because not that many people had TVs in the 50s. They just didn't have them. I grew up listening to radio more than watching TV, especially in the 50s. My mother would have the TV on, and there was almost nothing but soap operas on, and she never watched them. They were just like background noise.
Yeah.
But they were on. And when something did happen, like the Kennedy assassination, or John Glenn orbiting the Earth, it was on TV right then. I saw it. Sometimes they let you out of school to see it, because I know it couldn't have been in 54 that I saw it.
Right. Well, you're talking about people being kind of ignorant, like maybe, or not being sophisticated. And then there's a whole section of the show where they're explaining the concept of Baccarat as a card game. Have you ever had any experience with Baccarat?
I have never played it. I understand it, but
it's kind of like 21, right?
Yeah, it is. But you have the bank and the shoe and all that stuff. In that respect, it's completely different. But yeah, it works like 21 does. But the rules are completely different. Like the face cards and all that stuff is completely different.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting what I could get from it, but I was having a little bit of trouble following because they're giving the information about the mission at the same time they're giving information about the game. I'm trying to take in both sets of information, and it was giving me cognitive dissonance because I was having trouble keeping track of what was what. It was also weird to me to have Felix Leiter speaking with the English accent and being more like Bond than the guy he's supposed to be Bond is. What did you think about Peter Lorre as Le Chiffre?
Well, that's more like the story.
You think?
Yeah.
That's as easy to describe like a Peter Lorre type, you think?
Well, in a way, Le Chiffre was shoot, man, let me think about the story. I think he was a Turk. And by the way, Peter Lorre in a lot of movies played a Turk.
Yeah, I think he's originally Hungarian, right?
Oh, hell, I don't know.
Okay.
I used to have a buddy when I was in the service. His last name was Lorre, and it was spelled the same way, and he was Italian, so I don't know.
I just know that he was an immigrant. No, or maybe he was German, because he was in M.
I don't know, but you got to also remember, even back as far back as World War I, people like Germans changed their names. Jews changed their names. Greenberg would be Green, stuff like that. So I would have to get on Wikipedia or something to look that up.
One what I understand, he was like a big stage actor. He came into the Hollywood. They didn't have a lot of good roles for him. He also apparently had really horrible breath because he had like bad teeth, and he was like just an absolute chain smoker. And he was another one of these guys who like really resented that he couldn't get the parts because of the limitations implied by Hollywood. He wasn't handsome enough, he wasn't tall enough, all that kind of stuff. He always had to play like these Weasley kind of people. I really liked him in the role. I think he's probably my favorite. Le Chiffre, I think it's how you pronounce it, because he feels real. He feels kind of broken. He feels like a guy who's under a lot of stress, and he's just such a great screen villain. And also to hear him speaking in that non-accent, really, he's mostly speaking in an American accent.
The character in the book was a
Turk, you said.
I think he was a Turk, but it was more about the personality. He was a sneaky little son of a bitch.
Yeah. The whole thing is he's embezzling terrorists' money and for his own, gambling, and then he has to try to get himself out of the hole he's dug. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, it was a little bit different in the book too, and you got to remember that when you're talking about this stuff, that even though the book was released in 1954, it all takes place in 1952. And believe it or not, I mean, it doesn't. You should be able to understand what I'm talking about using something like technology as a reference. But back in those days, things changed quickly. Fads, what later on became known as fads or pulp culture or whatever you want to call it, things didn't slow down until the late 60s and into the 70s. And things happened quick. It's like, how long have we been watching people now with skinny pants? That shit went on back then. Okay, there was a time when skinny slacks and especially skinny jeans were kind of in. And hey, he's nothing if not eclectic.
Well, the truth is, country music is apparently popular right now, especially in Trump land, but even in general, country music is dominating the charts right now.
It's because we've had these discussions, maybe not so much you and me, but me and some of the guys like your in-laws down there, they've been listening to country all their lives. Country music has really changed.
Yeah.
Yet there's still people that are cutting their teeth on going back to the old style. See, so it's all going on at the same time. But there's a lot of stuff where it's just rock and roll done with a little twang or a little draw, you know. But it's always been like, I mean, let's face it, somebody like Neil Young, you listen to his stuff, that's country music. I don't care what anybody calls it. Now, he may put a lick here or a lick there that's not ordinarily heard in country. Maybe his lyrics are a little bit different than country, but he sings country. And of course, somebody nowadays, I mean, you think about it, to a lot of these kids now, you're an old man.
Oh, I am. I'm clearly, yeah.
Even somebody, Neil Young, and some of these guys are coming back. I mean, look at Bolton. I mean, the guy, he looks like a zombie because he's so damn old up there, but he still has a voice. The deadgum Stones are coming back out on tour. And I just saw last night, what's his name? The guitarist on the Stones.
Yeah, Keith Richards.
Keith Richards. He couldn't even sing as good as Willie could. I mean, here's this old, I was surprised old Willie. Every once in a while, he'd get a little sound out. But I mean, he was right on top of the mic and you couldn't hear him.
Yeah.
And Keith Richards, he couldn't even keep in tune. I was thinking, this guy's going on tour.
Well, he's not the one they want singing when they go on tour anyway.
Yeah, but what a lot of people don't realize, who do you think is back? The whole group did the backup, just like in the Beatles.
Yeah.
It's not going to sound right, even if Mick still had it. And I saw Mick on TV the other day, and I'm not sure if he does have it. He still seems to be able to move, but his voice cracks and seems to go up and down now.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I just know I'm not going to spend $200, $300, $400 for a ticket to see him.
I think that's conservative. That's nosebleeds for $300 these days.
That's my point.
Like, I don't go to concerts anymore because the prices are just so outrageous now. I can't. It's like you said about the ammo. It's like I'm getting 3 hours of entertainment max, and you're talking about me spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on that, and that's if I go alone, which I typically won't. So double it, and then it's like, no, I would. There were so many other things I'd rather do with that time and money than go to see a concert.
And the only reason why it's that high is
Ticketmaster.
because of things like ticket.
Yeah, and them allowing the monopoly to exist in Ticketmaster.
That's right.
Too.
And it's ridiculous.
Oh no, we won't gouge people. We'll be honest. We swear. Congress got rubber stamps that shit.
Man,
Fucking Congress.
I went to concert all the time.
$10.
Yeah, the most I ever paid for a concert was, I think it was $30 a ticket to see the Who in the late '80s.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty damn steep. Diminished value.
Well, and that's part of the problem too. Is the arenas have gotten so freaking large now that they're making so much freaking money, and you get such a lousy experience. I don't want to go to Toyota Center and watch a freaking concert. I'm not going to see anything. I'm going to be watching a monitor the whole damn time. All I'm paying for is decibels. I'm not seeing the freaking band. I'm nowhere near the band.
I never went to a concert where I wasn't pretty much on top of what was going on. Hell,
that's the whole damn point, is you want to actually be able to eyeball the band.
No, I remember seeing Steppenwolf in their heyday at Don the Beachcombers in San Diego, and I was sitting at a table, and I could have spit and hit any one of them. I was that close. In fact, I could smell their beer when they drank one. That's no bullshit.
Yeah.
Earth, Wind, and Fire. I saw them at San Diego State about 1973. They were new then. They were just coming out. I don't think I was 30 feet from them. And that concert, they didn't use lights. It was just the lights in the auditorium, so everything was brightly lit, and you could see everything. So, no, I'm not. Most of the concerts I went to in the 70s were no more than $10. I think the tickets for Steppenwolf were $8 to get into Don the Beachcombers, but you knew you had to buy something once you got inside. I think the whole evening cost me something like $18, $19.
Yeah.
It was a great experience. That was the other thing. Back in the old days, they could be among the people. The only thing that kept you from, the Who always had a stage, and it was always in the dome. And I was right there next to it. I saw Hard out in the Woodland, and I was right next to the stage, and the stage was about chest high on me, and I could see up their skirts. No crap. And I think those tickets were, I think they were like $15. Mm-hmm. But see, that was back in the days. They'd reach down from the stage and shake your hand, crap like that. Like you said, you're going to be a mile away from them nowadays. Yeah. But you can still find some of those concerts that are reasonable, and you can see some good stuff.
Well, I went to see the last concert I went to was Joan Osborne, and she was playing a little tiny place around River Oaks, and I bought out a table, because you could do that. You could just buy the whole table. So I bought out a table and ended up going with a work friend and her sister. And again, she could see us, we could see her. There's no question about it. We were the kids. 50s, and we're the kids compared to a lot of these other folks, because she got a whole new audience from doing Dylan covers. She's done a few albums of different Dylan covers. They're all going to see her play Dylan, and I'm like, but I remember the 90s stuff, I'm there for that. And I think thankfully she had a balance, but it was definitely tilted heavily toward the Dylan stuff. So, and she'd done Dylan covers even on her older albums. So it's great songcraft. She's a great singer, so I don't have a problem with that. So. But that was I paid a few $100 to buy out the table, but it was worth it because
that's an experience.
It's an actual experience. Yeah.
Plus, you had the table.
Yeah. So the other thing that surprised me about the TV adaptation, especially considering when it came out, was that they kept so much of the torture aspect. You don't actually get to see him whacking him in the nuts and stuff, but they do a pretty good number on him, and they tried to mutilate him at one point, and it seemed to be quite harrowing to me.
Violence is one of those things. It's like you said. There's no way in the world they would have shown.
No, not. But the fact they kept torture at all was surprising to me.
Yeah, and in the book, it's different than it was in the movie. But at the same time, I was surprised. I mean, was 2006.
Yeah, the modern version.
Yeah, I was surprised just how much they followed the book. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really surprised me. Yeah. But by the same token, it was so modernized. It was way different.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, I really didn't get into James Bond.
Well, and at the time that came out too, there was nothing about the classical James Bond really in that first teleplay. That none of the cool, sophisticated stuff, none of the gadgets, none of the stuff you associate with the movie Bond.
And it is the movie Bond. The difference between it was more bland.
Barry Nelson isn't Sean Connery.
Well, it's only in retrospect that, and like you're talking about, that was way before the first movie, and it was done for an American audience in the 50s. I mean, none of that surprises me.
The teleplay is interesting because of the impact that it has on the history of Bond, in cinema specifically. Because Fleming writes the first novel, it's a modest hit. He gets to do more novels, but at the same time he sells the rights for the teleplay for $1,000 in gin money,
Well, wait a minute. First off, trust me. In 1954, $1,000 was a lot of money. You could buy a new car for $500, man. Come on. You see, you're already out of time and think here.
Right, but at the same time, it's not millions. It's not like he's getting a motion
But
picture.
nothing was back then. I mean, we're not.
I'm saying even the equivalent.
Look,
you're saying, okay, if it's as much as a new car, or you could buy a new car for that. So you're talking about maybe $200,000 today, then, at most. You're saying like half the size.
$1,000. Let me see if I can put it in perspective. $1,000 would probably be equal to $20,000 or $25,000 today.
Okay.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Willie Nelson was selling songs for $50 a pop in the 60s.
Right.
So, I mean,
what evidence needs that?
It just, it's just the kind of thing that you have to kind of live through to realize it wasn't such a big deal. And also, you got to remember what kind of shape Britain was in then.
Right.
They were decades from recovering from the dead-come war.
Well, the thing is, too, when Fleming was writing that first book, he's supposed to be about to get married. My understanding is that it was sort of like he's writing this book sort of mourning the life that he was leaving behind when he was involved with things like naval intelligence to settle down. And then I think for the most part he's going to spend his time in Jamaica anyway, right? I imagine $1,000 would go pretty far in Jamaica.
Fleming was a messed up human being, and he really only cared about himself. I mean, anything you read about him, he was a self-grandized. He wanted to be a lord or something. He wanted to be somebody. And he just inflated everything about himself. I mean, I didn't like the man.
Yeah.
And when I read the stuff, the way he wrote it, when you read the books, he was always going off onto these tangents where he'd write things in another language. He'd write whole paragraphs and even whole pages, pretty much in another language, just to show he could. And I could to some extent, I could well understand why the movie people changed so many things. And especially the fact that the way he wrote the Bond character was, the character himself was as bland as the character you're talking about in that Playhouse presentation. Bond was kind of a boring guy. He was
he drank, he smoked, he was at his desk most of the year, and then he'd have his one adventure.
And he was one of these guys that didn't even want to take the time to try to pick up chicks, so he preyed on married women.
Yeah.
And that a lot of that crap came from Fleming himself. He wrote in, and he said in interviews, he could tell you this person and that person he knew, where he got these characters from and points of personality coming from Bond. And I think sometimes he lied. I think those things from Bond came straight from him. But he realized how boring he was, and no matter how, he claimed he wanted the character to be boring. I think that was some more bullshit. I think that he had to fight to keep less of himself out so the character wouldn't be too fucking boring. But yeah, James Bond wouldn't have gotten any older than Fleming himself because he didn't just drink and smoke. He was a drunk. He would drink anything, and he smoked constantly. And everything written about Fleming, and even in the interviews, you see any of the interviews, it's one cigarette after another. Mm-hmm. There are times you can't even see the faces on the TV screen because of the smoke. Which was not uncommon at the time. Yeah. All you got to do is look at an old Johnny Carson. Every one of them are smoking. Mm-hmm. And looking for a damn ashtray. Yeah. I mean, sometimes some guy you'd have one guest have to go around 3 to get to Johnny's ashtray. And Johnny'd have to wait to drop his in there. And see, that's something else that people just can't understand, the difference in the time. At the time you were born, people would be smoking in the hospital. There'd be these big ashtrays everywhere. And doctors and nurses weren't any better than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And it was nothing. The reason why they put them big ashtrays there is because if they didn't, people would just throw it on the floor and stomp on it.
Right. I remember all that. I was still present in when I was growing up, as I remember, obviously my grandmother was always looking for an ashtray too. But it was just part of the landscape of life, is those ashtrays being everywhere. Mm-hmm. And seeing them slowly disappear over time was interesting to me because I was very conscious of these things going away. And they were decorative too. Like I would get the ones where you'd have the little mechanism where it would be a closed metal top and you'd hit the little lever and then you'd dash and then you'd close it back up again. I remember you playing with those as a kid. Just you get bored and you just start fiddling with it and stuff. And then, or you have the ones that are like a coin purse and you would squeeze them, ash, and then let them go and they would cover over again so you'd have to smell it. All that kind of stuff used to be everywhere, and it's just, again, part of the landscape, and all that stuff's gone now.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you go to the supermarket, and there'd be a long train of people standing in line smoking. Yeah. People just don't understand that stuff now.
And of course, I remember sitting in the smoking section, which used to be a thing.
Well, but it wasn't a thing until later. Smoking sections were invented when people first started to complain about it. It's like you go to a restaurant, you have the smoking section, you have the other section that they didn't give a name to, and then you had the family section, because you knew that anybody with a family was going to have a kid, and people hated kids more than they did the cigarette.
I missed the family section, let me tell you.
Well, but I mean, it's true. It's true, because anytime that's the first section I can remember in restaurants was family section.
Right. Keep the damn kids away from me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember a flight in recent memory where I didn't have a crying baby or rambunctious kid or something. So, yeah.
Well, I told you that. I remember once we used to fly when I was a kid. We had a flight from Nashville to Houston, and it was a business flight. It was what they used to call a hopper, where the plane had to land in all these different places. It took off from Nashville, and it had to land in Louisville, Kentucky, and then it had to land in, I think it was in Washington, and then it had to land in Atlanta, and then someplace in Florida, and then New Orleans, and then land in Houston Hobby. And it was a big Constellation, which was a fancy plane, and of course, it was a prop plane, and it was getting closer to, there were jets there, but they still were operating the big prop planes, and that one was a Supercon, which was originally designed to fly the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean for international flights, but they were using it as this hopper. And because the plane was so big, there weren't that many people on board, so they moved our whole family, me, my mother, and my sisters, up to the first class. There was nobody up there. And we had our 2 stewardesses for the entire flight. They were twirling batons with my sisters, and because my sisters had all had these batons they'd gotten at Christmas or whatever. Yeah. And they were showing them how to twirl batons and doing all kinds of stuff, getting us all the drinks we wanted, all kinds of stuff, solely so that the passengers, which were mostly business people, didn't have to put up with it.
Right.
And that was not uncommon on jet back then, or on any commercial flight. If there were kids, they'd move them to a part of the plane. And that was back when you had assigned seat. A stewardess seat, there was certain...
You still have assigned seating.
Not like it was back then.
Oh, yeah.
It was more like a reservation in a restaurant back then. It was a completely different kind of thing. The last time I flew, you still could, it depended on the airlines, like Southwest, that was their whole thing, was you sat wherever. You know, you got on the plane, and once they started having those pose seatings up front, you know, right up front, where you had two sets of seats facing each other, I always tried to grab those. And they basically were there for like handicap and stuff, but if there was no handicap, why not?
Yeah.
They didn't label them handicap, but I knew that's what they were there for.
Right.
It was just completely different. Also, back in the day, you didn't have planes crowded like you have now.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when there was only two seats. You know, you had wider seats, and there was only two on each side of the cabin.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the first time I climbed on a three-seater. I go, my God, what is going on?
Yeah.
I thought I'd been moved to the hood, man. And it didn't matter the color of the people because they were white, but I mean, damn, you know, you got no elbow room anymore. Yeah, I can remember when the seats reclined almost into a bed. You know,
Yeah.
and that was well into the jet age.
Yeah.
And before wide body, but still, you know, when you look at an aircraft like a 727 or a 707, those were big honker aircraft.
Yeah.
You know, so there was plenty of room. Maybe the headroom was mostly in the aisle, but the seats were much bigger and there weren't as many of them.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a lot more comfortable experience. Yeah, you know, all that stuff comes into it. I mean, and especially when you're talking about the 50s, it was a completely different experience. You know, mini skirts. I can remember, man, mini skirts caused, you know, the Beatles' haircuts caused a stir, man, you know, but mini skirts, my God, there were still people in 1970 complaining about mini skirts, and by then they were the norm, man.
Right.
They didn't even call them mini skirts; they were just skirts.
Right. So let's see. So when did you see the 67 casino? Well, let me tell you. Okay. So there's a big thing related to the Climax adaptation because that tied up the rights to Casino Royale. And then when they were going to do the first movie, they actually wanted to adapt Thunderball first. But the problem is you had McClory, who had contributed to develop basically Fleming was developing a movie that wasn't a Bond, I don't think, initially. And then that was abandoned, and then he took ideas from that and turned it into Thunderball without crediting or paying the fellow Navy guy that he worked with. Eventually he got those rights back, and that's how Thunderball got messed up. Like, he had to sign off on Thunderball getting made in the first place, and then again he got to do Never Say Never Again, and in fact he was trying to do another remake of Thunderball in the 2000s. So they couldn't touch Casino Royale so they couldn't touch Thunderball for years without that guy signing off on it. And Casino Royale was similar, is they thought they had something with that book. You know, they thought they had something with those rights, and they were actually in a race to get a movie developed with Eon. Dr. No beat them, and once they saw Sean Connery in that role, they basically threw in the towel. And like a lot of really famous people were involved with the attempted American version of Casino Royale. Howard Hawks one time was going to direct it. Fucking Billy Wilder wrote a script for one time, or was involved with the script at one point in time. But they threw in the towel when they saw the Eon version. Of course, it made buku bucks as well. But they still retained those rights, and the guy who had the rights, although they actually passed through a few different people because of various deaths, by the time you get to 67, they've decided, well, we're going to make this thing come hell or high water. That's when you get to the 67 Casino Royale. Now, did you see that one when it came out? Because I know...
Yeah, I saw it because it had David Niven in it.
Yeah, and you like David Niven. And David Niven was the guy that everybody wanted to be Bond in the first place.
Yeah, I saw it the summer of 67. I know exactly where I saw it.
So tell us a little bit about that one.
We were going to a movie, and my cousin chose the movie. He was younger than me, but several weeks out of the year, I would live with them in Houston, and they actually lived in Bel Air, and we would go to the Meyerland Cinema. You know, they didn't have the ratings like they have now, but they would say that you couldn't get in, I think it was 17 or something like that. You couldn't get in without somebody. You had to be with somebody that was at least 17 or whatever. And the funny thing about my cousin was he was younger than me, but he had dark hair, and he was one of those that could grow hair and stuff when he was 12 years old or whatever. And of course by then we were teenagers, and I remember I was like 5'11" when I was like 14 years old. So even though I was taller than him, I looked young. I looked like a Dennis the Menace character. In fact, people often called me Dennis the Menace. I was tow-headed and blue-eyed and pink-skinned because I didn't have any hair anywhere. But David, he had hair on his legs and hair on his face and all that kind of crap. And so by going to the movies with him, they never questioned it. We just walked in. That's how I saw Our Man Flint, Inline Flint, Casino Royale, Barbarella. That's the only way I saw that stuff. And I was gaga over it. I think we watched Barbarella. I mean, that's the whole thing is we would go, like we'd get there at noon, and we wouldn't walk out there till like 5:30 in the afternoon because we watched the movies so often. I mean, sometimes even later than that. We just watched the movies over and over again. And especially Barbarella, hell, I think we went back like the next weekend and watched it 5 or 6 more times. Yeah, we thought it was, because it was a comedy. And we didn't understand it all.
Right. Nobody does.
But it was silly. I think we watched it twice because there really wasn't all that much in there.
Yeah.
It wasn't, some of the suggestion in it went over our heads, I guess. But yeah, I thought David Niven was just too cool, and I'd never really seen him in that kind of a comedy. You know?
Well, and it seems like he was playing something closer to the actual literary Bond.
No.
You don't think so?
No, the literary Bond was the guy who lived in Chelsea and always wanted to live in Chelsea. Saw himself retiring to a very quiet, because he was a creature of habit. He liked reading the paper, having his coffee or whatever in the morning. He ate the same shit over and over again. He was not the guy of the movies at all. And he had his housekeeper, and he didn't really ever see himself getting married.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what we see in the movie, though, is Niven's retired, he's got his estate. He's very critical of the libidinous nature of all these double O's that succeeded him.
But the Bond character wasn't like that. First off, he was one of the first double O's, okay? So, and
well, that's what I'm saying, is that he didn't like the guys who followed him.
Yeah, but see, Bond liked the guys just fine. First off, he was their boss. No, they borrowed with that David Niven, and it was obvious at the time, even to us dummies, that they were talking about the Playboy Mansion.
Oh, yeah.
It was another character entirely. And pop culture. All that Swami bull crap, that was, at the time that movie came out, all that was big stuff. And people were flocking to these Indians in California and everything, getting their insight. It's like Christmas Day, I was talking, you saw them little crystals that came with your thing. There's still, that was a thing that was real popular for a long time in pop culture, but it still goes on. People believe damn rock is going to give you some kind of
mystic crystal revelation.
I guess.
Right.
Okay, that's good enough. But it's like for a long time people thought pyramids, there was a secret to the pyramid that could resharpen razor blades and crap like that, People went, they come up with this kind of crap. They've been doing it all my life. They've been coming up with it. And I've never seen any evidence. Look, for 30 years, people believed in ESP. I was thinking they were talking about AI. They've been talking about AI.
What? Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, but in the 80s, they were talking AI, and in the early 90s, you could buy these programs to put on your computer, so your computer had voice recognition and stuff. And when I bought a computer, I think it was about 93 or 94, I bought a computer. It came with a disc for that you could download. And I crapped around with it, I tinkered with it for a week or so, and I just gave up on it. Your aunt talks to her phone all the time. She uses Alexa or whatever it is.
Siri or whatever.
Siri, I think it's Siri. Or Google, she can't, I think when she talks to Google too. I don't use any of that crap.
Yeah.
I did set it up on my iPad, and if I turned it on, I use this British chick's voice, and she calls me my love. But I got bored with it pretty quick.
I know that if I've got my phone on for whatever reason, because I don't ever do voice command stuff, but I know that they're still listening because I'll talk about something and all of a sudden I start getting ads for that thing. I'm like, you fuckers are listening. I know you fuckers are listening. Pisses me off. So I use it as little as possible, and I'm very particular, and I'm not, and mostly I don't even do it at all, but I still know that stuff's happening. They're obviously listening if they're doing this shit, so don't lie.
I realize that somebody nowadays, you can't do anything without somebody watching you, electronically or otherwise. And I know it's a conspiracy to get money.
Oh yeah.
But I don't see the conspiracy any further than the money angle. And
well, again, I mean, AI is a scam too. They're making it think like it's going to do everything for everybody, and it's like it costs a fucking fortune to generate stuff with AI, and they're just trying to pay for it, and they don't have the money to pay for it. So that stuff's going to go away just because they can't afford to maintain it.
You may have a point there, but the whole idea of giving a machine a thinking mind, however digital it may be, is a dangerous thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's dangerous not just because of some sort of Skynet war games kind of thing, but also because the whole goal is to try to put as many people out of work as possible and to get as much for as little as possible. That's part of the scam, is like, we don't want to hire artists, we don't want to hire people to make stuff, we want to have our magical box do it for us, and it's already paid for. We don't have to pay for anybody's health care and all this other kind of bullshit. It's just another scam to get out of actually paying human beings to do a job.
It's another way to steal somebody's ideas.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, because all it is regurgitating stuff that actually has already existed, and that's why you got all these creatives who are suing because they've used their materials to generate this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, fucking crap.
Well, I don't know what to say about it other than the fact that greed is the one constant in human existence.
Sure, yeah. And getting back to that gets us back to the old Casino Royale. They were so hell-bound to get money out of this thing, and I think they're afraid that the fad's going to burn off, which isn't completely that far off, because really once you get to 67, 68, most of these things are diminishing returns, right? And so it's like, okay, so what we're going to do, and the other problem too is like everything that they wanted, everything that they, from Casino Royale, that Aeon wanted, they just stole, and they managed to put it in different movies in different ways, as you've mentioned. And so they were looking at it and going, well, we can't adapt our own book because they've already been done elsewhere. So they chopped the book, they gave like 4 different directors carte blanche, here's money, go take these actors, you've got all these great actors that they managed to rope into this thing, and go off and make a part of the movie, and we'll just push it all together and we'll call it a parody, and that'll be that. And then at some point when they get everything back and nothing connects and nothing makes sense, somebody had the idea to go ahead and fill bridging sequences. So there's stuff at the beginning and then throughout that give it some semblance of an order, and to make people understand that, okay, the idea is they've killed off all these 00 agents, so they're replacing them with a bunch of people that they were all claiming are James Bond, so they can basically not, for no particularly good reason, just because they just decided all the remaining agents are going to be James Bond, everybody they can group can be James Bond, and they're all going to go off on missions. Peter Sellers specifically wanted to actually do the movie straight, and so even though they hire him to be a comedian and a parody, he does everything he can to actually do a straight adaptation, to the point where he's getting into fist fights with people. You know, he punches, I think, the director, who quits, and then he's eventually fired, from what I understand. But the funny thing is, he actually had a percentage of the net, And so he made tons of money off of that movie that he didn't even finish, and was almost like in active dissension from insubordinate during the entire time the movie was being made. And what was funny to me is I read about the movie before I watched it, and I'd seen bits of the movie back in the 80s on cable. I'd never actually sat down and watched the whole thing. And it's a fucking train wreck of a movie. It's just a complete incomprehensible mess of a movie. But I appreciated that Sellers was actually trying to adapt Casino Royale. I don't see him ever being like James Bond as much as he wanted to be, seemingly. But I thought his sequences were all right. It was interesting to see Orson Welles playing Le Chiffre and doing all the magical tricks and stuff. And even though his stuff wasn't funny, I think that he had sort of an amused quality to his performance that let him know that he was in on the joke, at least. He was fun. But actually, for me, I think that the stuff with the daughter of James Bond, the real James Bond, and Matahari, for me, that was the best sequence. Not only is it filmed the best, I liked all the weird German impressionism stuff. They really had that really pop and color. It felt like it was a real product of the 60s and that pop art era. But I thought the actress was pretty funny. Like, she came the closest to actually being funny. I don't think the movie is very funny, but she came the closest to being funny, especially in her interactions with her dad, and how they make her seem like she's this exotic figure of the East, and then she talks like somebody from the lower classes. You know? I thought that was actually pretty amusing. The Peter Sellers stuff was okay. Just weird to me, randomly Peter O'Toole shows up. And of course they had to cobble together an ending to that sequence. They had tons of great performers. It looks good. What's on the screen looks good. It's just a fucking mess of a movie, and I don't ever see myself watching that one again.
Well, every once in a while I'll watch it and I get a few giggles out of it. But yeah, the trippy sequences, Peter Sellers included, all that smoke and nightmarish, whatever it was supposed to be, high anxiety or whatever. You want to see her wreck of the movie. I think that was the title of it, was High Anxiety.
The Mel Brooks movie?
No, this one was Jerry Lewis.
None of that one.
Yeah, Jerry Lewis came out with this movie. I keep wanting to say it was called High Anxiety, but he was trying to make a comeback. He was already kind of over the hill. But it was similar in a way. I remember it was one of those movies. I don't have the movie because I didn't like it when I saw it when I was younger. And I remember that was one of the only movies I ever walked out of feeling like I'd been ripped off. And then there was a movie, I think it was in the 90s, early 90s or whatever, where a guy went ballistic out. He was in public and he went totally ballistic. And it was the same thing.
Michael Douglas?
Might have been.
Falling Down?
Yeah, probably. I hated the movie. Felt ripped off by it.
Well, obviously his politics and his mentality didn't sit well with you. Not your kind of guy.
I don't know. I mean, all the Douglas people, they made movies I liked. And I try not to let politics and shit come into it.
But it's a very political movie.
I guess. It's just a guy losing it for no reason, the way I see it.
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff on the news is that way. I don't understand it. I don't understand why anybody would destroy whatever kind of life they have, because it's only going to get worse when they become bad actors.
Yeah.
You know, a guy in Vegas, man, shit, he looked like he was doing pretty damn good, and he's going to go up in Vegas and start shooting people. It just it don't make no sense to me. You know, when I first hear it, it makes me mad. I wish I was up there with an AK so I could take him out myself. I don't see the sense in killing children and teachers and people going to a concert like the stuff going on in Israel. I understand the Israeli point of view to a certain extent, but what pisses me off is they got Israel because there was decent people and political people that might not be so decent that wanted to give them a place of their own where they would be safe. And now it looks like they're turning around and being the kind of people that Palestinians need to be protected from them. But at the same token, it's true that these fanatics take over whole cultures and become a norm. I thought it was a bad idea to allow the PLO, which is where it started, to become part of a government. It just didn't make any sense to me. But only because of their radical point of view. But the Israelis, I about half believe that this crap was engineered so that the right wing could have their way.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've known that Benjamin Netanyahu has funneled money to organizations like Hamas for years to basically validate his right-wing worldview of keep him in power. I don't know if it got as far as financing what happened. I kind of think that maybe Putin had a hand in that. It definitely took a lot of heat off of him. And
I don't think Putin had it. I think it's just exactly the way Iranians back all that kind of crap. That's a fact. I think Netanyahu knew something. He may not known exactly what was going to happen, but he knew something like it was going to happen.
Yeah, well, when you look at the security failings, when you look at the security failings, it's like, were you not listening? Was that intentional?
Well, but
it's not. It's because they knew something was going to happen, like you said.
Well, and they're the ones that keep breaking the damn treaties. They were
and stuff, yeah,
taking more and more territory. And I think what it boils down to is just like Putin. Netanyahu wants more territory. He wants all of Palestine, and he wants it for Israel. He wants to expand Israel.
Well, and it's clear that they wanted an excuse to blow up Gaza to hell, and that's what they've been doing. It's like they can talk about, we're trying to save the hostages. You're literally killing the hostages, but you want to destroy that whole area. You want an excuse to push every Palestinian out of the area, and you want to take the land.
You saw that email I sent out when the attack first happened, and everything I said in it was absolutely true. They're doing exactly what I thought they would do. And it was not ESP or any bright light in my skull. I've known enough Israelis. The first Israeli I ever met, I met in 1973. She was a moderate, but she'd also been a tank commander. She was getting her doctorate from San Diego State in sociology. I didn't know squat about the politics of Israeli politics back then. I didn't know any of it. I knew very little about the politics of Vietnam, and I'd just come back from there. But talking to her gave me an insight into the Israeli government. And every Israeli I've met since then, and there's been plenty of them, just kept adding to the total of information in my skull. So when that happened, I knew that the fan hit. What's going on doesn't surprise me at all. And the fact that it's genocide, that doesn't surprise me either. And as much as I'd like to say it doesn't make any sense, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I just feel for those people because I know. And it's the same thing. They're killing kids. Makes me madder now. My attitude is, no matter what we adults do, children shouldn't have to suffer. Children, there's things about my childhood that I could whine and cry about. But overall, I realize that when you're a child, your ignorance and good times can way outweigh everything else. And I think all children should at least have their childhood before they get slapped in the face with adulthood. I used to give to a lot of different causes. I only give to two now. I give to St. Jude and to the Shriners. That's because they directly help children and, of course, the families of those children at times when it's needed to give them a better life, give them a childhood. And I can't think of anything greater that you can do. It has nothing to do with nationalities or any of that crap. All it has to do with is children. That's the other thing. I like animals. Mama has 14 freaking cats that tear up everything and stink up everything out here where we're sitting right now. I don't really want that. But I'm not going to get a gun and start shooting feral cats because of it. That's just cruelty, If she wants to feed them, let them feed her. There's just some things that people shouldn't do, and cruelty is one of them.
So what did you think about the Burt Bacharach score on the Casino Royale 67?
I was a big Bacharach fan, so not of the man, but of his work. I grew up at a time when he was the bomb, man. He was the sophisticated side of pop. That's why I got all of his stuff in my playlist. And every time one comes on, it takes me back.
My only problem is that it's repetitive as hell. They play the crap out of his music throughout that movie. I want to be humming that song for the rest of my life. What do you think about Dusty Springfield's The Look of Love as the theme song?
Well,
I mean, it's not really the theme song, it's actually in the movie itself, but I guess that's the official Bond song of the movie.
the thing is, sometimes I don't understand why they use the tunes that they use, but then again, I was a big Dusty Springfield fan. Those are songs that, all that stuff is from my childhood. Of course, I grew up with it, and then into my teenage years, they were still popular. Petula Clark is another one. I love all that stuff, so when they use it in a movie, I don't give it a second thought. I really don't. You know, it's just part of me, really. I mean, I can understand a difference because that's not really true for you. I mean, you were born about the time they were all peeking out. You know, you talk about Burt Bacharach. I can remember I was in military school at the time, but I had a 45 of Do You Know the Way to San Jose?
Dionne Warwick's version?
Warwick's, yeah. And, you know, she did a bunch of stuff for him. He liked her, and I've seen her in interviews saying how hard that stuff was to sing, because it is hard. She's not the only one to say it.
Yeah.
But maybe that's one of the things about his work.
It challenges the singer, and it's unique. It strives to be more than the average.
It's like you're talking about Warwick. Warwick was never a beauty queen. But I can remember listening to Do You Know the Way to San Jose over and over and over again, and envisioning this beauty.
Yeah.
You know?
Very coquettish performance.
So, I mean, I don't know what you say about it. Burt Bacharach was another asshole. All you got to do is, you know, he's considered, like Elvis Costello considers him one of the true greats, and a lot of people do. But personally, he's a self-absorbed, self-inflated asshole.
Yeah.
You know? What was it? Oh, shit. Angie Dickinson was married to him. And I remember seeing her in an interview. She said, you know, the thing is he is great, and he knows he's great, and when you're in bed with him, there's just no room for anybody but him. He can be in a room, you go to walk in there, and there's just no room.
Right.
So I'm sure on a personal level, he's not so great, but in a professional level, he was.
Alan Boyce Jr., Captain Entropy.
Chris at Bat Brooks for Beginners.
Christine.
Coffee and Comics. Derek William Crabb. Doc Strange.
Go for No.
Gregory Lynchfield. The Hammer Strikes. Random Geeky Stuff. History of Comics on Film.
The Irredeemable Shag. Jarrett Keene. Jared Albrecht, the Yard Sale Artist.
Keith G. Baker.
King Dinosaur. Lorenzo Sleestat. Ranger Gord. Relatively Geeky Podcast Network, and Richard Field.
The preceding program is intended for the common good at no expense to any citizen. It should therefore be considered to possess a license to thrill in service to fair use, and not seen as a hostile act against copyright owners in the international marketplace. As always, should any of our agents be compromised regardless, we will disavow any knowledge of their activities. This transmission will self-destruct in 5 seconds.